you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
And welcome to a special Inside the Numbers, folks, with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. And I told you, starting when we got in mid-October, we were going to probably do, some special episodes here going into it because there's just too much content to cover on Wednesdays and Fridays. We'll have, of course, What Are the Odds tomorrow at 7:30 with Barnes and Barris. Don't miss that. I think that should be funny with Robert and I. And we'll probably have some wrapped up polling results that we're going to go over. But, overall, let's just talk about the elephant in the room here. Over the weekend, let me tell you what I think is happening here, which I think everybody should have expected to happen over and over and over and over again. We do this in these election cycles. In 2018, Republicans thought that a good economic situation, even though Trump was, not like historically unpopular, but, underwater, but that a good economy and tax cuts and, rising wages, we had wage growth that was 3% on the 12-year for the first time in 3% or more for the first time since the Great Recession. We had GDP that was 3%. For the first time annually since the Great Depression. So Republicans really, or recession, sorry. The Republicans really thought that they could buck history and, that would be it. But the Mueller investigation, the fake Russia hoax, player here, it's fake. All right. So if you're a partisan, sorry if you believe that Russia and Donald Trump colluded to steal the 2016 election. That did not happen. That was fake. Okay. But back in 2018, there were a lot of people who still believed it. It certainly hurt candidates like Dana Rohrabacher out in Orange County. Mike Bloomberg spent almost, $3 million on behalf of Harley Ruda to paint somebody like Dana Rohrabacher as a Russian agent like Donald Trump. And it did have an impact on a race like that. But for the most part, what happened was simple. It was a first-term incumbent midterm. The president was underwater. And the Democrats led on the most important voting issue to voters in the cycle, which was health care. So you could thank John McCain. You could thank Paul Ryan. You could thank all the other people who basically failed or sabotaged the skinny repeal of health care because Republicans could not argue a hypothetical, which is that Republicans are protections for pre-existing conditions. And that is what won swing voters even in states that were relatively red or red-leaning, all right? Now, some bucked that trend, which is something we should be aware of. Iowa moved toward Democrats while Ohio did not, right? Florida did not. So we had Arizona, which we have our guest today, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Kari Lake. We'll talk about Arizona in great detail, but it definitely got more tight. It got more purple. Now, before, because we're going to talk about this with Kari, but before we bring her on, it's important to note there were trends that were favoring Democrats in some of these states. Arizona is a perfect example. Republicans once R+5 had been whittled all the way down to R+3. Maricopa, which used to be R+2 to 3, got whittled all the way down to even. So there were trends and plus the environment that suggested that, probably a Democrat had a chance of winning the Senate race there. What happened? Yeah, she didn't win it by as much as other people thought she was going to win it by. The RCP average was McSally plus a little bit, but that was only because of some final polls there. For the most part, Sinema led by ridiculous margins in some of these polls, especially in the summer polling. 6-8 points. Fox News was Sinema plus 13. All right, she won by a fraction. So now here we are, and it's the reverse. Democrats are trying to argue what? The Inflation Reduction Act is going to save them from a wipeout? That's not historically supported by evidence at all. What is that Democrats are headed for a really bad night. All throughout the year, folks, ladies and gentlemen, we had historic leads on the generic ballot for Republicans. Leads I have never seen or polled before in my life. Anywhere from 6 to 13 points or 11 points. I have to go back and look. And actually, we could look right now. And what I saw over the weekend was very much the beginning of a return to the pre-summer environment. There were independents in our Labor Day poll, the pre-Labor Day poll. There were independents who told us, and they were, the kind of voter who told us they were going to break for Republicans pretty hard. They basically said, and here, let me pull it up and you'll see our generic ballot trend. They basically said, I was voting Republican. I don't know if I'm going to now. Maybe I won't vote at all. I'm pretty much undecided. That's what happened here. All right, here's the generic ballot trend for the Public Polling Project. And actually, I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see the tooltip when I hover over it, okay? After Biden was elected, we saw some pretty tight results, but Democrats actually, 0.2 of a percentage point. That's a statistical tie. Republicans began to really widen out a lead going in before the holidays of last year. You remember the poll in October we had discussed. This is why this scam of Putinflation was never going to work. The blame it on the used car salesman was never going to work because the American people told us this before politicians decided they needed to make up excuses for it. You understand what I'm saying? So 47-39 was the first Republican lead that we saw. That was a significant Republican lead, and that was going into Thanksgiving, okay? And we did a poll back then, and it suggested the shortages were leading to inflation. Inflation was really hurting people. Christmas dinner was a situation for them. Thanksgiving was a situation for them. If they couldn't, remember the woman who told us when we showcased this, if I can afford it, I can't find it. If I can find it, I can't afford it. All right. And this was a major problem. These were Biden voters. Many were Biden voters who were saying, I am going to vote Republican. Others were Biden voters who were disappointed and basically didn't tell us, they didn't want to jump up and down and celebrate that they voted for Joe Biden, or maybe even the Democrat too as well in down ticket. They didn't want to celebrate it. So they kind of were like, they left home and they went to, I don't like this guy. I somewhat disapprove. What happened, leading into the summer is a very consistent trend here. 45-38. 46-38, 47-37, and I'm rounding, of course, here, guys. That was the biggest lead for Republicans. So a 10-point lead for Republicans was our biggest. And then it tightened to about Republican +3. If you round, it's +2. Republicans +2 in that pre-Labor Day poll. And what happened is that some people came home to Joe Biden. His approval rating got 2 points better. But right track, wrong track was still bad. Undecided didn't tick up. Really, what happened is that someone else jumped a little bit. That yellow line is someone else or other that jumped a little bit. And some of the people that we spoke to left the likely voter model. All right, or people like them, those kinds of people. All right. This time, what I'm seeing now is basically a return to the Republicans. These people have to decide. Folks, 11% is not going to be undecided, obviously. 5% of the vote for someone else is probably not going to happen. It's going to be more like 2 to 3, right? So you chisel away another 2% of being conservative off other and the undecided break. We did look in detail at who was undecided in that poll. They were not really rich targets for Democrats. This was more, they could be in another, like in a 2018, they could be, but in this year they were not. And all year they were indicating, people like this were indicating those demographics that they were going to vote Republican. And I think what we're seeing now is a return to that. Is it going to be as dramatic as R plus 10? I don't know, but I will tell you this, 5 to 8 or 5 to 6, easy, actually. R5, R6 is very doable for Republicans, which would be more or less wipe out territory. And it's hard to imagine some of these people voting for, Republicans on the congressional level, but then ignoring some of the generic Senate preference that we had seen all year long leading up until this election. What do I mean by generic preference? Pennsylvania, great example. Jim Lee from Susquehanna and myself numerous times polled Pennsylvania statewide and asked people, do you prefer, Pat Toomey's leaving, there's a race to replace a seat. Would you prefer a Republican or a Democrat to win that election? That's like a generic kind of Senate ballot. Republicans were leading by like 4 to 5 points all year. So it's a little hard for me to believe that there's something specifically off about Mehmet Oz that those people are not going to vote for him. Are there probably some people who don't want to vote for a Turkish Muslim? Maybe. But I still don't think it's going to be enough. There is also, just a moment on Oz before we move on to the more general environment. We have seen it in our polling, and we're going back to Pennsylvania. We are actually polled parts of Pennsylvania this weekend, which I can't really get into right now, but the movement is real. Biden's approval is falling a little bit in some of these areas, and the generic ballot is very close in areas that it really should not be close. These are Biden significant districts, and if those districts are close, then I just don't understand how people are ignoring what the implications of that are, to the rest of the overall political environment. And looking at a race like Mehmet Oz in statewide, we are not moving. Even though the polling has not shifted more dramatically to Mehmet Oz, we are not moving that rating. We are keeping that rating 3 weeks out here, still to leans Republican. We do believe the history, the political environment, all tell us that it is more likely Mehmet Oz will outperform the polls and that people will be wrong, the polls will be wrong, than the fundamentals and all of the historic average error rates, and of course all being in one direction, being right for once, okay? The odds of them being wrong again is much greater than the odds of the fundamentals being wrong, okay? So looking at, maybe it's just their polling, and we'll have our own revisit to Pennsylvania, and we'll have our own numbers for both Oz and the Senate. But for right now, I'm keeping that rating at leans Republican. We do believe that Oz probably will win that seat by about 2 points. All right. And what I want to say is we see it in the polling, and it's anecdotal with people that we talk to, politicos that we talk to. The Oz phenomena in areas where Republicans don't do well. So we see some of these polls that still have Fetterman up by like 2, but Oz is killing it in places like Philadelphia and Allegheny County. That is real. I spoke the other day to somebody who told me, and they did like a joint thing with Oz. They couldn't go anywhere. There was multiple stops in Philadelphia, somewhere in walking distance. The man was swamped by voters on the streets. Italians and black voters who are fed up and don't like John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. So don't be surprised if Mehmet Oz takes 20% of the black vote. It could happen, absolutely. Polling shows that it is possible. And I just don't see there being an offset of this, I'm going to vote for, Oz and do so well. And he's going to do 40-something% in Allegheny. He's going to outperform Trump by nearly 10 points in Philadelphia. Yet somehow he's going to get his butt kicked so badly in Western Pennsylvania. Come on. That is unlikely to happen. Yeah, I do think that there could be a coalition shift. So the margins are a little bit different here and there, but it will not be so dramatic that somebody who gets 42, 44 potentially percent in Allegheny County as a Republican loses the state. I just don't believe it. I'm sorry. The odds of the polls missing are so much more likely than that being the case. All right. But that's a specific on Pennsylvania. And one of the reasons why is because it's also somewhere we're personally polling right now. Also, this phenomena of Democratic voters, registered Democrats, especially newly converted Democrats, Trump-era Democrats, let's call them. Maybe even some of them voted for Mitt Romney in 2016, all right? those people, people who didn't like Trump, affluent metro suburban Democrats that didn't like Donald Trump, but had been voting like wasps for people like Mitt Romney and John McCain for years. All right. Maybe they weren't personally, but they're like them as well. Add those two groups together. They're demographically similar to them. All right. Those people are telling us they're not Democrats. We know they're Democrats. We know they are because of their voter file. They're Democrats, but they're telling us that they are independent. We saw this we're seeing it everywhere, but in two states where it's very dramatic is in Pennsylvania, especially southeastern Pennsylvania, Montgomery, Delaware. This is a very bad sign for any party. When your party voter is unwilling to admit or be just flat out proud, yes, I consider myself a Democrat, it means they're either depressed, which is mostly the case, or worse for a party, they're on the verge of defecting. This happened to Republicans in the past. It's happened to Democrats in the past. And it is almost always the case that you will see it in the polling that people will stop identifying. Arizona, where our guest, soon-to-be guest, comes from, obviously is running her race. 7% of registered Democrats told us that they were not Democrats. We just ran the voter analysis model for locals. If you're a local supporter, then you saw it and you know. The bottom line is there has been movement in Arizona back to Republicans. The state overall moved back to roughly R+5. Maricopa moved back a little bit over R+2. All right. So we do see this swing back. And by the way, Georgia, we'll talk about that a little bit too. But Georgia's an inference, so it's a little bit different. You have to infer in Georgia what it is. All right. But in Arizona, perfect example. Rasmussen Reports just did the generic ballot in multiple states, and what they found was absolutely rather interesting. They found almost identical to what we found, which is that it's more like R+7. The electorate is more than what the electorate is more Republican than what the voter registration suggests. That's bad news for a party. Can it happen, without there being some dramatic undertones going on? Yes, it can, but it didn't happen a couple months ago. We polled that state before we polled it, 2 weeks ago? We polled that state before the primary, 10 days before the primary, something around that. That duration. And we did not see it then. We did not. We saw what looked to be very similar to what the voter registration trends are. All right. So right now, Arizona, let me look, about 31% or almost, 32 registered Democrats in the state of Arizona, yet anywhere between 24 and 26% is all we were seeing in self-identification. And Rasmussen saw the same damn thing. And that's why it looks like independents are either slightly going for Hobbs in the governor's race and in other races, or it's very tight because they're really not independents. They are, in fact, registered Democrats. They're just telling you they're independents. All right. But it bodes badly for turnout for that party when you have signs of that party being depressed. And what does that mean? I mean, overall, and here, give me 1 second. Overall, you should generally expect this. All right. And right track, wrong track has been ugly. And while it improved in the pre-Labor Day poll, it's actually looking to me right now that it's going to worsen again. Now, it's early and I'll give it some time. I don't want to, jump the shark here, but it does look like right direction may hang a little bit steady or fall a little bit while wrong track rises a little bit. That's what my best guess is right now. Again, really, really bad sign for the incumbent party. Everybody knows this, folks. Everybody knows this. This is election forecasting 101. It's Pathology 101. Right track, wrong track. Historically negative. It's a bad thing for the incumbent party, especially in a first-term incumbent midterm. If the president is unpopular, And by the way, he looks like he's going to tick down to 38 again. If he's unpopular, it's a bad sign. We were looking at all of these polls, state to state. We were going over these polls with you. And even though some of these races looked rather close, let me give you the because Ron Johnson's lead is going to be bigger in our next poll. It's going to be. I'm just telling you right now, just expect it. Let me see. I may have to go through a couple of them. That's governor. Okay, actually, though, let's keep this. We had a small lead for Tim Michels. All right. Look who was undecided. Independent was the biggest chunk of undecided at 22%, and that was a group. Michels was winning 42 to 33. The advanced postgrads that are great for Democrats in general, but Tony Evers, they were the smallest remaining undecided group. High school or less, a group Michels was winning significantly, was 19% undecided, I'm rounding, and some college, another great group for Republicans, 16% undecided. The 4-year college degree, 13% undecided, yeah, but in Wisconsin, folks, the first 2 education groups are much bigger. So what do I mean by that? If there were 10% of college, no college each still undecided, it's actually beneficial to the group who's winning the no college, because the no college is a bigger group. All right, now let's look. That's a Trump v. Biden rematch. Let's look at Ron Johnson, who at that time had a 3-point lead. You can see actually here that this is one case where no, it's not. There are independents that are disproportionately working class independents who are undecided. So what does that suggest? It suggests that the Republican candidate is likely to widen their lead. And in fact, it does look like Ron Johnson is widening his lead. His lead is growing. All right. Here's the Senate in Nevada. It doesn't have the undecideds, but it was the same thing here. So Laxalt had a chance to actually widen his lead. And here's why. Again, I'm going to go over this over and over and over. The most important voting issue is not abortion. Democrats bet the farm on abortion. You can see right here. Is it, running kind of strong with number 2 and in some places number 3, and nationally, it's roughly the same thing. Yeah, it is. But who's it driven by? Their own vote. 30%. 30% of every Democrat surveyed in this poll chose abortion. That's what makes up the lion's share of 14% who said abortion was their number 1 issue. And it was actually 13.7, slightly more said the economy and jobs. Where are independents on these issues? More aligned with the Republican Party or more aligned with the Democratic Party? The only way that Democrats would be able to salvage this is if it was back to like 2012 and a D+5 environment. That's not going to happen. It's just not, folks. 2018 was a D+ environment because it was a first-term incumbent midterm. And they did an average performance in the House, and they did not do very well in the Senate. In fact, Republicans did put up the best performance since JFK for a first term because of the map. Who does the map favor this time? Especially when you consider that there is a pro-party environment. Who does the map benefit? And I got news for everybody. 2024 is even more Republican, the map in the Senate. The most likely scenario in the Senate is a +2 net gain for Republicans. They're on the verge of a +3 if Blake Masters pulls ahead of, or Bolduc could as well. And yes, it could be a total wipeout. That generic ballot right now is moving toward R+4 in the aggregate. If it's more like R+6, then that's Arizona, folks. That's gone. Kelly is a one-term senator. Arizona is a Republican-lean state relatively to the national average. So, Biden won it by 4. He won it by 0.2. He won the popular vote nationwide by 4, yet he only won Arizona by 0.2%. If it's R+4 or more, Kelly is going to have a very difficult time holding on to his Senate seat. All right. And we'll have later in the week, we'll have more discussion on whether or not that move with Victor going on a national televised debate and with people watching statewide and basically saying, that we need to debate the age of consent leads to a surge or not? Or is it more likely that it just led to a surge in people who won't vote for Mark Kelly because he put on such a bad performance, and instead just don't want to admit they're going to vote for Blake Masters? Which one's more likely? Historically, is there a big historic long record of Arizona voting used for third parties? No, there is not. Even in 2016. But let's go to that, actually, shall we? All right. Before we have our guest on. 45, 46, remaining undecided, obviously favoring Blake Masters, Republicans in general, when you have Republicans winning statewide on every ballot. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because we'll pop it up here in a little bit. But, 49, 45, I think it's been pretty much confirmed by now. Other polls, even big media polls, which obviously lean Democrat, let's face it. That's not an unfair statement to make. They absolutely skew Democrat. I'm not going to play this little game. Live in this little world where they don't. They do. And yet they still have Kari Lake up by 3 or 4 roughly. So what does that tell you as far as the rest of the polling we did? Is it more likely that they missed Masters voters or that I'm wrong? Which is more likely? All right. So generally speaking, what I'm trying to convey here is I don't know that we're going to see this big environment here for Republicans. Whoops, let me add it back. Like we saw earlier in the year. But it's definitely moving. Oops, that's the right track, wrong track. It's definitely moving back to Republicans because we are seeing people who said in the Labor Day poll, pre-Labor Day poll, that, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I won't even vote. That's generally what we saw. All right. So we'll talk more about this in a second here. But there are some other people that are coming around. There's an article in Town Hall right now. What's his name? Let's go. So pollster Stephen Kent not only said that a red wave is coming, but it will also be quite extensive, larger than projected due to the struggling economy. Democrats have not and will not successfully drag abortion up the ranks on the scale of the top concerns impacting voters. Kent cited North Carolina's Senate race to discuss the 2022 midterms, since they both have formidable candidates in Republican congressional candidate, Congressman Ted Budd and Democrat Sherry Beasley. And I will, he says he envisions Budd winning by about 1.2, which would be still a blowout nationally if Budd wins by like 2. I'll tell you right now, people at, places like Decision Desk and others have openly stated now, after I said publicly, they've openly stated they think Ted Budd's going to win that race by more like 5. All right. But the truth is, even a 2-point win for Budd could still be a 2014 wipeout for Democrats because, that's what Tillis won by about 1.8, something like that, right? About 2 points. So that's, that's in the cards. That's where we're at here. So I have this thing going over here. Hold on, let me stop it. So that's where the environment is moving. We pulled North Carolina months and months ago. It's not a race that's up high on our list to poll because we do think that Ted Budd is going to win that. All right. So look, other states would tell us whether or not a Republican was in trouble in a state like North Carolina. So that's why we prioritize those other states. I mean, really, I think at this point, North Carolina is a likely Republican win. Likely, not leans, likely. Sherry Beasley is a formidable candidate. She can raise money for sure, but she has, for people who aren't familiar with internal North Carolina politics, Democrats are basically in a panic over here. They don't think that Sherry Beasley is going to win, and they're concerned that the court is going to get wiped out. There is a slight liberal majority. If Republicans win these 2 seats, it will flip completely to a Republican majority, and people are pretty much resigned to the fact that that probably is going to happen. It's likely that that is going to happen. Sherry Beasley has lost support from people that she had when she ran for previous judicial appointments, and their support that she needs, because you need this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, I don't want to say moderate, but it is, or conservative. I definitely don't want to say conservative, but I guess it doesn't matter whether it's accurate enough. The point I'm trying to make is that right or wrong, a Democrat like Roy Cooper, who's the governor, and other Democratic candidates like Cunningham, who have come really close to winning. Kay Hagan, who was the last Democratic senator from North Carolina. She never ran as a left-wing Obama sycophant, right? But the moment that she turned into one, she lost. She was defeated. You can't run as a liberal or progressive Democrat in the state of North Carolina and win. You just can't. You have to pretend, at least pretend, with the media carrying water for you, which we're going to get into more in a bit. You have to at least pretend that you're a moderate or a conservative, and the media, with their help, you convince enough people in some more conservative areas, and you tighten some of those margins up. You still win Mecklenburg and Wake County, for instance, by like a huge margin, but you don't do it to the, at the cost of being able to tighten some margins out in eastern North Carolina, some of those counties. You can't do that. You can't have Pitt County damn near even. You have to win Pitt County. You got to win it handily. All right. So I just don't see it. That's my point. I just don't see it. All right. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest if they're ready. Thumbs up. Ready? Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's do it. All right. Look, I just want to say before I do this, the invitation to Katie Hobbs is wide open. All right. I would love if more Democrats would come on the show. They just won't do it, which is what I want to talk about right now. Ladies and gentlemen.
Why wouldn't they want to talk to you? You're one of the nicest guys out there.
I know. I even say to them, look, you will get a fair shake. We can kind of outline what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to ambag you. They just won't do it. And it's a little frustrating because I think, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which is because you're doing an above average, I would say, probably the best out of most Republican candidates. You're doing the best job I've seen yet of dealing with this phenomenon, which is like this post-COVID phenomenon where the Democrat hides, like Joe Biden, and the media runs their messaging in their campaign. And a lot of Republicans I'm seeing just really don't know how to handle that, but you have handled it. So I was wondering if you could just real quick speak to that, like what you do to still get your message out, when the media is doing what they're doing. And by the way, I mean, that's what your opponent does. I could show the tweet right now. Your opponent, I mean, he just cites headlines all day. It's just it's just odd. It's just, I've never seen this before. How do you not go in front of voters and you just allow the media to tell your story? So, how do you combat that? Because you're doing it.
Well, they've been able to do that for so long because the media has been carrying the water for the Democrats, an arm of the Democrat Party, basically, the media has been. And I understand the media because I worked in it for 30 years. So I'm able to really kind of put our own media out there using social media. We do press conferences and, we have an exciting campaign. So a lot of media is here covering it. And that is helpful for us, even though they're not covering us fairly. We've become accustomed to that as Republicans. At least they're out there covering it, and I get a chance to interact with them. And sometimes that's where we get our best material to put out is my interactions with the press, calling them out for just a dereliction of duty.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a perfect example right here. This is what Arizonans are reading today. This is not, I just don't understand what that means. So you have your friends in the media, and one of the Republican opponents in running for statewide office is media as well. And nobody has, I actually looked to see whether or not they covered her career. In yours has been covered extensively. Yet the Democrat, who was also a former member of the media, who's Abraham Hamadeh's opponent, they haven't said a thing. So it's just it's a little bit more than a double standard. It's a strategy.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just so unfair. I will say this. I was impressed with, I went on the last 2 weeks on Sunday. I went on kind of the mainstream media's Sunday morning show. And I was impressed that they pushed Hobbs as much as they did. I figured it would be a complete softball interview. But they did push her on her stance on abortion. They pushed her on her unwillingness to debate. But what I really want to get to is talking about the issues. I went on CNN thinking they would want to talk about the real, very real issues facing Arizonans, from inflation to our wide open border to fentanyl poisonings to the crime and to education. There's just so many things to talk about. None of that was discussed. They brought up the 2020 election. They talked about asylum seekers. Their whole avenue of covering the border is from the perspective of, should we be giving more people asylum and help these asylum seekers? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? We have a wide open border. We have millions of people pouring in, many of them with criminal backgrounds. When are we going to start looking at the people of Arizona and putting them first? And CNN really disappointed me with just the topics that they chose to cover with my interview. They won't talk about the issues.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason for that. I mean, they bet the farm on abortion in our last polling. Abortion obviously increased, but it was completely fueled by Democratic voters, and even not all of them. Like you said, I think that they may run a risk here of losing some of their own vote. Not a huge amount, but in elections, that are won on the margins, any amount is that was unnecessary is a disaster. The issues were inflation, the economy, and immigration, and you won all of those voters. So you're up over the top 5 issues. You lead among 4 out of the 5. So,
and I think we are changing the discussion on abortion. They want to push us on that and say we're extreme because we're pro-life and we want to save as many babies as possible and help as many women as possible. And I just spun it around and threw it right back at them. We're not radical for wanting to save lives and wanting to help mothers. They are radical because they are for abortion up to 9 months. You could be in labor. Ready to deliver your baby, and Katie Hobbs and this pro-abortion movement is okay with you having an abortion. They have no limits at all. They are the ones who are radical. And so we just spun it right back at them and said, no, you are the radical. Most people don't agree with where they stand, and they want to constantly push us in a corner because we want to help people. And so I'm really proud of the fact that I've gotten them now on their heels about where they stand on abortion, which is actually the more radical stance.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we've pulled this issue in great detail for years, and the only vulnerability for Republicans is not to go on the offensive like you did, to just sit back and try to hide or appease or hope people don't talk about it. Talk about it like you did and throw it back at them, because they are the ones left out in literally left field with a very tiny minority who believes that that's okay. But I think they don't get to the issues because, then we have to talk about what that means for Arizona over the next 4 years and over the next 8 years, over the next 12, the future of the state. And what I want to ask you, what do you think Arizona looks like? What do you think the difference is if you win versus Katie Hobbs wins? What would Arizona look like?
Gosh.
What would it be like? Yeah, can you paint that picture?
Well, have you been to LA and San Francisco lately?
Yeah.
What my opponent wants is to turn us into California. Those same policies that have driven California into the ditch and destroyed a once beautiful, wonderful state is what she would push here. And we would not have a secure border. She's not even for the border wall, even though she used that border wall as a backdrop for one of her misleading commercials. She's for wide open borders. She's a globalist, and they're not even for, let me tell you, they're not even for the working class anymore. The Democrats used to say, Rich, that they cared about the working class. They don't. I just got on Friday, the first ever in the history of smart transportation, the first ever Republican governor that they've ever endorsed. They endorsed me. This is huge. We've got a major union for when it comes to our railroads endorsing a Republican governor candidate because the left has lost it. They don't care about the working class. And I think we're going to start seeing that. The working class are Republicans now.
That is huge. And you look at who's undecided in all the polling as well. I think that the potential for the lead to grow is significant. And there's kind of a red alert. And I don't know if you read this yet, but there's kind of a red alert in the New York Times. And I actually have been hearing this for weeks, and the coverage is so dishonest, but I've been hearing this from Democrats for weeks, that they think that Katie Hobbs is just not up to it, that you're outworking her. I don't know if you got a chance, but it says Democrats worry Katie Hobbs is stumbling in Arizona's governor race. You know,
Yeah, she is stumbling. She had a horrible week. You saw last week what happened to her.
oh, it's terrible. It was, and the answer on Hispanics, which is something else I want to. I know I don't have that much time with you, but the answer with the Hispanic forum, dodging the one, and then sitting down and not being able to answer a single thing, you know, about positive contributions or things you've learned in his community, being able to add, you know, answer something like that when obviously it's such an important voting group, but also part of the communities in Arizona.
Yeah.
You're doing extremely well with the Hispanic vote in Arizona, as are other Republican candidates, but you are outperforming most. And I'm curious, you know, why more. What are you doing to do this, I guess, and then why isn't more attention being brought to this? Because New Right, which is what I would like to call it, it's younger, it's more diverse. I think we're going to see something very different next month, which is, you know, when we get these exit polls back and everybody starts looking through the results and fishing through the results, I think we're going to see a different coalition that supports you than we have seen in the past. And, you know, you just brought some of it up. Maybe it's just part that they're out of touch. But, you know, one Hispanic voter basically said, look, I don't have time to learn new pronouns. Inflation is through the roof here. You know, I mean, amazing. You know, I love listening to voters when we poll, and I try to really hear them. And what do you think about that? What did you make an extra effort, or is this natural?
I'm just trying to speak to the people of Arizona, and I really don't care if they have an R or D or an independent behind their name. I really believe that our policies are the best for solving these problems we had for a long time. I covered all the issues for Arizona for 27 years, so I understand the people, and I'm trying to appeal to all of them that we need some common sense solutions. I think the new Republican Party, the New Right, is the most inclusive political party in the history of politics in this country. I mean, we don't care what your skin color is, what zip code you're from. Do you love this country? Do you want common sense solutions? Do you want your freedoms restored? Do you want safe streets? Do you want your kids taught stuff that actually makes sense and helps them so they can take advantage of the opportunities in the future, and the government out of your life? If you like all of that, then you're a Republican. I think people are just waking up to the fact that they're no longer Democrats. I just saw a poll this morning, and it hasn't been released yet. It was some internal polling that shows I'm getting close to 12% of the Democrat vote. I don't know if that's a big deal or not. I was a little bit surprised by that. You can probably tell me what's normal for a Republican to get, but that tells me that Democrats are peeling away and are waking up to the nonsense that this Democrat Party is pushing, the pronouns, the transgenderism on our children, the wide open borders, the look the other way when it comes to crime and homelessness. It's just, they're tired of it.
5 to 8%. You don't want to lose any more than that. You know, 12% that's significant, because you're not going to lose 12% of the Republican vote. And unlike some others, independents, you know, it's funny you bring this up, because what we're hearing from Democrats, 5 to 7% independent, told us that they were independents when we know they're registered Democrats. I was just talking about that in the beginning in the segment. That's always a bad sign for that party. It means they're either very disgruntled, they're happy with you, and they're not enthusiastic and may not even vote, or worse, they're on the verge of defecting. So I 100% believe that, that 12%. So, and that is always, it's just one of those signs where you don't want to see. And it happens to both parties over the years, but you know, it's happening to Democrats right now. I know you're busy, but
wait, are you telling me when you interviewed Democrats, you knew they were Democrats, but they weren't admitting they were Democrats?
Yes. And let me give you the number. So about 32%, depending on the day, we knew were registered Democrats in Arizona. And yet only 24 to 26% were telling us that they were Democrats. The rest of the 5 to 7% were telling us they were independents or something else, like a third party, which is that is a bad sign. It means they're unhappy. Truth be told, we saw some of this with some of the, a good example, a comparison would be like never Trumper Republicans under Trump. We knew that they were still registered Republicans, but they were either calling themselves independents or something else, which is, you know, it means they're moving away. And again, that's one thing that pollsters like me, they know it, but they just don't. It doesn't seem to be a lot of talk about it, and we're not the only ones. There's a Rasmussen poll that came out last week, which pollsters talk. We talked, and they're like, look at this self ID in Arizona, and I showed them ours right back. This is what we found as well. So it's a thing. It's not a one-off. It's not an outlier. It's a thing. But
so where do I need to concentrate my time in the next few weeks? In your opinion?
Yeah,
I'm gonna turn the tables on you and ask you a question, Rich.
It's Arizona, and everybody says Maricopa, Maricopa, Maricopa. That's true, but you actually have some real potential in Pima. So, Katie Hobbs, one of the first things people pointed out with our polling is how bad she was doing in Pima County. And actually, I'll point that out. You would think you'd have it locked down by now, but she was at 55% in Pima County, 37% you were at in Pima County, and that is typically a cap for Republicans. But the undecided vote was working class vote. So it almost doesn't matter what their registration is. If they're independents or Republicans and they're working, if they have some college degree or below, then they're very likely to vote for you. But actually, I don't know if people saw that when I had it up there, but you have the 4-year degrees very close, which tells me you're winning back some of the 4-year degrees that wandered away over the last 6 years from the Republican Party. They're moseying on back, leaving postgraduate and advanced degrees all by themselves. Which is wipeout territory for Democrats. I mean, if this happens nationally, it's wipeout territory. But of course,
well, we're going back to Pima County tomorrow. We spent a lot of time down there. So, and I'll tell you, we're drawing crowds, 500, 800, even 1,000 people in one of the most liberal cities. Tucson is one of the most liberal cities in our state. And they're fed up. The people down there are fed up. So I think it's a good sign for us. We may not win it, but as you said, if we can just sneak a few more points down there, that's a big deal.
And so I just tighten the margin. I mean, that's the game, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, why don't we hear a closing argument? How about that? Tell people where they can learn more about you, all that.
Oh, well, thank you. We talked a little bit earlier. I said, you asked what the state would look like if it was Katie. And I said, it's going to look a lot more like California. And it's going to be bad policies that actually don't make any sense, that hurt our lives. And if you vote for me, we're going to restore that uniqueness that makes Arizona, Arizona. We don't want to be California. We want to be Arizona. We want to have a secure border. I am going to secure that border and go back to fighting for the people of Arizona, just like President Trump did. With a secure border, we can push the cartels back into Mexico. They're currently in charge of our border, and we're not okay with that. We're going to bring some common sense when it comes to our education. We want to do a dual track education. After 10th grade, our kids decide if they want to take the college track or get trade skill training, vocational training, and career certification right there in high school. So they're ready to get out of high school to take on the jobs that are out there. There are a lot of great jobs out there. And we're going to go back to the broken windows policing. And if you don't know what that is, it's back when Rudy Giuliani took over New York City. It was a mess. The 70s and 80s, New York City was just an unsafe place. He came in and turned that city around by really going after the little crimes. The little crimes lead to the big crimes. And so we're going to make sure that we restore safety on our streets here in Arizona. And I have a plan to tackle the chronic street homelessness as well, so we don't turn into San Francisco, Portland, or Seattle. You can find all of my plans at my website, karilake.com. I lay it all out in great detail there. And make sure you talk to your neighbors. Even if you wouldn't have had a conversation before with your neighbors who were Democrat or you knew they were not Republicans, talk to them, because a lot has changed between the last election and this one. I know that for people who are nearing retirement or are retired, they're looking at the retirement savings, and it has dried up by about a third under Joe Biden. And people are really starting to walk away from the Democrat Party. It's time to open up conversations with our friends and neighbors about who they should vote for and help them make that decision for November 8th. I would really appreciate everyone listening to get out and vote.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy. I appreciate it. Hope you come back soon. All the best to you.
Thank you, Rich. And sorry for the cancellation. You can probably hear it. I'm still battling a cold, and I just didn't have a voice last week. And I still don't have a great voice, but we're working on it. It's been 504 days on the campaign trail. And I guess I finally got sick during it, and we're just kind of coming back from it.
I heard an interview maybe a day or two before that you were supposed to come on, and I heard your voice, and I actually said to Laura, I'm like, she sounds hoarse, you know, better check in on her. She sounds hoarse to me. Make sure she's all right. So it's all right. It happens to the best of us. So I appreciate you making the time to come back on.
Thanks. When's your next poll coming out for Arizona?
About 5 days, right in that ballpark. And I always want for Arizona, it's just one of those states. I always want one that comes out right before, but it does look like we'll be able to sneak one more in. So it's almost like a tracker, right? Some of these other states we'll be putting aside, but the Senate race is still close there. You know, I think Blake Masters it closed the gap, and I want to keep an eye on it really close to see, where it goes.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Keep up the good work. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Kari. All the best.
Bye-bye.
In Gubernatorial Kit in Arizona, Kari Lake, and I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't see the difference between how could I put it without without insulting some of the other guests that come on. If you don't see the difference with somebody who understands, what they're up against as a Republican, when you run, you're not just running against a candidate. You're not just running against an opponent and a message. You have to fight back everybody. And, we call it the media handicap. Some people call it media bias. It's way beyond a media bias at this point. And she is she is. The candidate that I have seen that has done the best job at dealing with what we constantly refer to as the media handicap. Now, part of that is that she's just, I'm not sure you can be taught some of this. You either have it or you don't, but I'm sure her experience in media helped her out quite a bit. But she absolutely knows how to handle people, handle that bias, handle people like Sunday shows and just when she's walking around the campaign trail, throwing up that the abortion thing was a perfect example. She's one of the few who have done what we how many times did we go over that abortion result and show you that even pro-choice has an edge in self-identification. But when you go down and ask people, do you support it during this period, during the second trimester, the first, the second, the third, and get specific with them, you will see large chunks of people who identify as pro-choice drop off. No, I don't support abortion at that point. No, I don't. So when they say they're pro-choice, a big share does not support anything beyond the first trimester. When you get to the second trimester, it's like a deal breaker. When you get to the third trimester, we're talking about super majorities. So what Kari Lake is doing, her strategy is just a no-brainer. I don't know how any other Republican, why they would run from it. You actually have the majority position, but you have to understand that the American people aren't going to know that. The voter isn't going to know that unless you tell them. You have to be the one to tell them. And I use Trump as a great example. In 2016, during the debate, Hillary Clinton knew she was in trouble, regardless of what the media poll suggested. They knew they were dealing with somebody different. And they knew that potentially the polling was not good and could not be trusted. Even the WikiLeaks don't. That showed right from Google's former CEO was talking with her campaign back and forth. You cannot trust the media poll, and she knew it. Polling in Michigan suggested she would beat Bernie Sanders. They thought there was kind of like a Trump effect there, especially in the Midwest, and it was not going to happen. So by the couple of weeks out, and we're into that debate, she tried to use abortion because Trump had said that Roe v. Wade would be overturned if he was elected because he would appoint justices who would overturn Roe v. Wade. She came at him with it, and he just turned to her and said, Hillary, I'm not the radical here. You're the one who wants to rip babies out of the womb up until the point of birth. And of course, the media, the USA Today, Wisconsin's branch of PolitiFact, it was like 5 of them, all fact-checked in real time. Where's the fact-checkers? Remember that? She was calling on them to fact-check, saying that was not her position. It was not the Democratic Party's position. Of course it was. People did not believe them, and she dropped the abortion issue altogether. Katie Hobbs took she knows how to learn a lesson. And when Hobbs came at Kari Lake like that, she just handled it the same way. And now it's almost, folks, again, I'll show it to you again. The most important issue to the voters of Arizona is not abortion. It is being fueled by Democrats. It's inflation, like everyone else. It's economy and jobs. Abortion is in there with the top 5, but then it's immigration and border security, and rounding out, somebody would have to go back and look at maybe guns or crime or something like that. Out of 4 of the 5 issues that matter most to voters, including the number 1, Kari Lake leads Katie Hobbs. That is how you win an election. You cannot be trailing your opponent on the most important issue. All right. KariLake.com. All right. KariLake.com. What a great interview, and I appreciate her stopping by. She's very busy. Even though, look, you never take anything for granted, and you always run like you're 10 points behind, even though she's not. You do, and she's doing it. She's working like she got sick, she said. Even she got sick. I heard her. Oh, I forgot to thank her for the shout out on Hannity. I'm sure that pleased Hannity quite a bit, right? All right, let's have a word from our sponsor. I'm sure Hannity was just thrilled. Look, food shortages could be coming even in the U.S. Experts know it. They were pining about it as early as July. Drought, inflation, even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits like Laura and I have done for our family. It's not an ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years survival food. Hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. These kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they're light-resistant, and they stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Just go to 4patriots.com/TPP for the People's Pundit to build your own stockpile today, like Laura and I have done for our family. If you want to go and browse their great website where they have fantastic other products, I'm just telling you the 3-month survival kit is a must-have. It is the core of your survival strategy. All right, but go to their website, check out a lot of other fantastic, useful products that they have. And if you do, don't forget to use promo code TPP10. That's promo code TPP10. And that will get you 10% off site-wide from your order. Enter it at checkout. Again, that's TPP10. All right, one more we got to get through, and then we're going to take a few of those questions that we had left over. All right, it is going to be a short episode today. All right, because it is a special episode, but we are going to have a little bit more here. And we're going to have a recap of what I said in the intro. All right. So, yeah, look, the last time the economy got this bad, the stock market tanked 50%. The U.S. dollar lost 46% of its value. The price of oil quadrupled. And yet, while the U.S. economy collapsed and inflation ran through the roof like it is now, the price of gold shot up 1,300%. Silver rocketed over 2,400. So if history repeats itself, we absolutely could see it happen again. And can you afford to miss what could be the biggest gold and silver boom of our generation? I'm not. That's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver, you could get $10,000 or more in free silver just for doing it. It's a rare opportunity, so don't miss what could be your best opportunity to protect your retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com. That's TPP for the People's Pundit, the People's Pundit. tpplikesgold.com. All right, and that will wrap it for the word from the sponsors. And I lost some lighting, so I'm starting to disappear a little bit. Look, overall here, before I get to the questions, what I want to make sure everybody understands and knows is that we know from historical data, we know from what we have seen in the Public Polling Project and what we have seen, the work we've done with CD Media, who I want to thank for sponsoring the work, supporting the work we've done in states like Arizona, in states like Nevada, in states like Wisconsin. Oh, no, Nevada wasn't, sorry, but still, thanks for it. In states like Wisconsin and what looks to be states like Georgia, all right? I want to thank them for that because, it allows us to get a wider, or a larger data set, all right, of polling data as opposed to what we were just able to do on our own through locals and the show or the Public Polling Project. And, the picture is starting to get painted here. All right. And it's not just us. All right. There was, let's see, we'll look at it here. Fox News is the only one with a Democratic lead on the generic ballot right now. And they're a registered voter poll. Indefensible for Fox News to release a registered voter poll at the beginning of the second week of October. It's absolutely outrageous. Outrageous. It's indefensible. The only reason you would do that is if you want to make sure you give, look, mark my words, because people ask me all the time, what's going on with Fox News? They've never been a great poll. That's the truth. But I'll tell you what's going on with Fox News. Fox News is pissed they don't run the Republican Party anymore. Kari Lake, who we just had on, is a perfect example. Fox News and their friends used to run the Republican Party. They got to pick nominees for you. They told you who to vote for. And by the way, Republican voters listened until Donald Trump. Then everything has changed. Now they hate Trump. They hate Trump. They hate Trumpers. They hate Trump voters. They hate MAGA. They wanted Karen Taylor Robson to win so bad over Kari Lake. So bad, in fact, that Laura Ingraham actually stated on live television that a vote came in Maricopa and that Karen Taylor Robson had pulled in the lead and that the race was over. That was absolutely intentional. It was cover for Maricopa County. Don't tell me. It was. She was trying to lay down cover for Maricopa County. And if it wasn't for people like Steve Kornacki and myself and others who are out there saying, no, that is not true. And in fact, it's not possible because Kari Lake is winning the late arriving ballots. Kari Lake is winning from the mail. Kari Lake is winning the drop-off in-person ballots, which, by the way, Republicans are instructing this time their voters not to do. The 2,000 mule voter, because they are the ones that take 4 days to count under Arizona law. They have to be verified. Maricopa will not count them. Right now in our last poll, Kari Lake is winning them overwhelmingly, and it's about 10% of the vote, 10%. Republicans don't want voters. They want mail. Drop before election day, but do not drop it off on election day because that will take forever. You could vote on election day, and that would be counted after the early vote comes in. But if Republicans were to vote early, then it would cut down the draw we saw during the Kari Lake versus Karen Taylor Robson. The early vote came in. Everybody was shocked it was that much of a lead for Karen Taylor Robson. And, Laura's saying I broke up about the election day. Yeah, just the handing in the ballot on election day. Laura said I broke up a little bit, so I'm going to repeat it. If you hand in your mail-in ballot in Arizona on election day, it is not like Florida. It's still a you-know-what show over there, all right? That vote will take days and days and days and days to be counted. If you don't like how not transparent our elections are, then don't hand your vote in if it's a mail-in ballot on election day, because that's the vote that's going to be counted in secret in Maricopa at, whatever hour they choose days later. And it will leave all of these questions surrounding how they're doing it and all these questions surrounding whether or not the margin's big enough to close the gap. Either vote early in the mail or bring it in. You can still take your mail-in ballot and bring it into the office, your area, and then it will be processed, and we'll see it on election night returns. But if you do it on election day or could be right before, like either mail it early or bring it in early or vote on election day. But if you hand in your ballot on election day, like a 2,000 mules voter, it causes bigger problems. All right? It does. Expect, we've been over this before, expect Hobbs to have a big lead when the early vote comes in. If she doesn't have a big lead, then she has no chance. And by big, what do I mean by big? Like over 10 points. Over. Like way over. Because it looks to me like there's going to be a bigger election day vote in Arizona than I have ever seen. It looked like that in the primary, and it was historic. Historic. So, Oh, you did let her know? Okay, good. Thank you, Laura. All right. So with that in mind, what was the one? Oh, Michigan. That's the question I wanted to answer before we go. Yes, Michigan does appear to be tightening quite a bit. Insider Advantage had the race even now. Okay, even. Signal, who polls a lot for the establishment. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just telling you right now. They poll for Kevin McCarthy, the NRCC, and candidates who are partnered with the NRCC. It's them and it's Fabrizio, all right, for the most part. They poll a lot for the establishment. They had the race, I think, down to 2 or 4 points, which was a significant closing. However, their electorate was D heavy. Ladies and gentlemen, Michigan should be the next state we run a voter analysis on. There isn't registration by party. It's all self-ID, and you have to infer. Michigan was R+ in 2020. It is very much like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania in that while even Pennsylvania does have registration, Pennsylvania's electorate is looking like R+1 to us right now. By the way, just thinking about with Kari Lake about Rasmussen's generic ballot polling in the states, without a doubt, they see exactly what we see as well. There's like 15% of Democrats who are not calling themselves Democrats. So, I mean, it's a big number. So the electorate, even though they have a still pretty significant registration advantage, those people don't tell you they're Democrats. And the electorate self-identified is about R+1. Very small number of independents, anywhere between 14 to 18. Very small number of independents or MPAs in Pennsylvania. It is R48, D47, or R45, D44. That's where it's at. That's Pennsylvania, folks. Michigan is much the same way. So if you look at Signal's polling, it's actually weighted for party and it's weighted to Democrats. Tudor Dixon was winning independents. And if that's the case, and the electorate is even or R+1, Tudor Dixon's going to win that race. I went back after seeing that and looked at some of the other media polls. The D+ ridiculous is just ridiculous. That's not Michigan anymore. As a matter of fact, locals, since we're polling other states that we've already done voter analysis models for, get ready for the voter analysis in Michigan. That'll be next. All right? All right, so I wanted to answer that before we go. But why is Obama stumping for candidates in some states? What is it going to do? Put Dems ahead of Republicans in these states? They're trying to juice their turnout. And that's what Virginia, that's what the ploy was all about with abortion. They knew they couldn't get it to be the number one issue. What they don't want to happen is what typically happens to first-term incumbents like happened to Obama. Look, Obama stumped for himself and couldn't get those people out. They lent Charlie Crist his entire turnout operation in Florida back when he was running against Rick Scott, and Rick Scott still beat him. It doesn't really work that way. Obama has never really shown the ability to juice out voters the way that Trump has. He just doesn't. For himself, yes. But for Joe Biden, no. Jim Clyburn did that for Joe Biden in the primaries. And yes, Barack Obama helped by Barack Obama made phone calls. That's how he helped him. We'll find out about Mastriano and where he is, guys. I know that there's a lot of people asking about Mastriano, but Virginia, good question. I don't really want to comment on it until I see it, until I do it myself. which I haven't, done fully. It does, I got to tell you, it does look like Mastriano is not doing as well as Oz in some of these other places. He's not doing as well in Philadelphia. He's not doing as well in Allegheny. He's not. All right. So that leaves the Northeast in my mind, because I know Mastriano is going to do extremely well in the typical conservative parts of Pennsylvania. The question is how well will he do in Lackawanna? How well will he do in Luzerne? How well will he do in Pike, Monroe? Those areas in the Northeast, that will decide it. And I just, I'm not there yet to make a comment. So I just want to wait. I will say this, though, as a caveat, even with our own results. I think it is much easier for a pollster to miss Mastriano's support than it is to miss Oz's support. The fact is, he has there's a likelihood that there's a social bias attached to Mastriano that there is not attached to Oz. All right. Then number two, hold on one second. Hold on. Number two. There we go. We also have to acknowledge the impact of the money disparity here. The Republican Governors Association abandoned Mastriano. He has spent like less than $3 million. Josh Shapiro has spent, at this point, I think it's like 26. I went and looked it up before. It was 20 when I looked last time. And this month was another 5.5 or something. So he's being outspent badly. It has an impact. The Republican Governors Association and some even elected officials in Pennsylvania outwardly say they'll vote for Mehmet Oz, but they're not going to vote for Doug Mastriano. I don't know how, if you're a Republican, you could do that. You're not really a Republican then. That's just the truth. The Keystone State is the Keystone State for a reason. The presidency runs through the Keystone State. So, I love Laura. The Keystone State is the linchpin of the presidency. If you win it, you have a much, much easier path, and it likely means you also won Wisconsin at least. If not, you could win Michigan, but it definitely means you've won Wisconsin because Wisconsin's more rural and more Republican. So I got to tell you, if you're a Republican and you're voting for Josh Shapiro, you're not a Republican. You're giving the presidency to Democrats in 2024. I'll say this here. I've always walked the line when I'm on YouTube. And the only reason, by the way, we still are is because Rumble is glitched on us and disconnected on us. And I don't think it's fair to our advertisers that there's not another place if Rumble goes down again like it did the other day. When we were speaking of Doug Mastriano, we were interviewing Doug Mastriano and it went down on us. That's not okay. So until we feel a little bit more secure, at least, we have to, be fair. Although there will be episodes where I just jump off of YouTube and tell you go to Rumble. It's going to happen. It happens a lot, actually, for those who watch the show. The bottom line is you cannot call yourself a Republican if you are voting for Josh Shapiro. And it's that simple. And he is, there's this police officer who was like, I'm going to vote for Oz, but I'm not going to vote for Doug Shapiro. I'm not going to vote for Mastriano because of all the stupid stuff that he's seen in the ads. And to me, it's like the guy is telling me how upset he is over rising crime in Philadelphia. Josh Shapiro's the attorney general. So that's the impact of money. Of course, it makes no sense if you're worried about rising crime to vote for Josh Shapiro. He's the reason there's rising crime, or one of them. Absolutely. A big part of it. All right. So it doesn't make any sense, but that's the impact of money. That's what money can do. And if you're a Republican who's going to vote for Josh Shapiro, then you're just an idiot. I'm sorry. I normally don't bash people like that, but it's just, you want a Democratic president. Democrat voters would never do that. Like true Democrat, they never do that. All right. So, there we are. All right. So, we'll have that back. All right. It's a short show. It was supposed to be an hour. It's an hour and 15 minutes. So I should, keep it real. Keep it real. I never, even on short shows, I ask Laura, I never get off on an hour. Here she is. Go ahead.
Never,
baby.
ever, ever. But don't forget that you're going to be on Charlie Kirk at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that's Charlie Kirk at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Whoop whoop. And quite frankly, right?
That is later today, I believe. And then
Later
also,
today, actually, I can get that for people right now because he just texted.
And then,
7:20.
I also want to know if
7:25.
this is live, so I'll wait. Never mind.
All right. So
Yeah,
Charlie
I don't
Kirk at 2:30 or 2:20? Charlie Kirk at 2:30.
2:30.
2:30, folks, the Charlie Kirk Show. And of course, quite frankly, who I love my interviews with Frank. And the audience loves Frank. Inside the Numbers audience loves Frank.
Oh,
man.
Frank is awesome.
Frank is cool, man. 7:25. I'm gonna jump on around 7:20. So, you know what? Let me just tell you 7:20 in case he brings me on a bit early. All right, but
Yeah,
he's got something
be
going
there
on. I
or
told
be
him.
square. It's a
Yeah.
good because Frank
You
is.
should listen from the beginning.
You and Frank are the same, where you're eclectic in information. Like you're everywhere
Yeah. Yeah.
in a
And
good
so,
kind
you
of
know,
way, not
in a
bad
good way.
kind of way.
In a good way. Yeah. He wants me to talk about my experience with him. He wants me to
Yes.
talk. But no, I with the
And somebody
I've-
asked when you were going to be on Hannity. I don't think Hannity will ever have Rich on.
I don't think that's gonna happen, folks. I
No.
wouldn't hold my breath on that. Tucker, that's a different story.
Oh, I love Tucker.
I mean, he was
Yeah.
good. He was good to me.
And
I'll
Tucker
go on
gives you a
Tucker
good
anytime he
shake.
asks.
Whether
Yeah, he does. You know what I liked about Tucker too? I mean, he's just on. They did the research. They do the research. Like he doesn't care. What other smears are. But I mean, he'll give you a chance to answer smears, which he did by PolitiFact. So he does the research. And I'll tell you, out of all the shows I've ever been on, I've never been nervous. Never. The time when the first, thought of going on Tucker did make me a little bit. I was excited at first. But then when I was getting on, I'm like, oh my God, there's like 5 million people watching right now. And it did get to me a little bit until
his
he teed
cheeks
it up
got rosy,
and he went over
the
the record. And he went over the record and he's like, this is the guy they love to hate because he's more accurate than they are. Everybody gets it wrong except this guy and they hate him for it. And that put me, at ease. But I forgot what that feeling felt like. I've never been like, that just doesn't happen to me.
It was an
And I
excitement
forgot.
for you, though. Not so much.
It was.
Nervous excitement, happy excitement.
Yeah, what's the
though.
word? Anxious.
Oh,
Anxious
however,
is a better word.
that was the
Anxious,
day
yeah.
that Rich decided to use the brand new camera for the first time.
Glitched out on national television.
And I almost.
I popped
That
right
was-
back on though. I popped
Thank
right
you,
back on. It
Jesus.
just glitched. You know what it was? The setting was on like lens refresh every 3 minutes or something, and you can turn it off. But the lens literally goes. Whoosh, whoosh,
He didn't
and
even let me
closes
read
and
the book,
opens.
guys. All right.
No, I wanted a clearer picture on Tucker. I wanted the clearest picture as possible. All right. So with that in mind, don't forget Charlie Kirk 2:30. Quite frankly, starts at 7. So if you want to just tune in, which you should, it's a great show. That's just 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Watch my Twitter for it. Of course, I'm going to tweet it out. He probably did it already. You can watch in a lot of places. So whether you watch YouTube, Rumble, he does several others, SoundCloud.
TV.
Yeah. So quite frankly, TV.tv, quite frankly.tv. You could just go to his website there. It's streaming. But we'll tweet it out. Keep an eye for it. Just be there. I'm going to be on around 7:20, 7:25. Just be there, 7:20 the latest. But if I was you, I'd watch, quite frankly. We do. It's interesting. Laura loves, quite frankly. She
Yes.
does. Right.
Yes.
Laura's like, cook. If we're like, it's a late night and we're cooking, or something. Laura's always got, quite frankly, on listening to Frank.
He's
But yeah,
hysterical.
Charlie, he is, man. He's great. He's entertaining as hell. All
And
right,
again,
so
that's
let's-
Charlie Kirk at 2:32. 2:30 as
All right,
well, not
cool.
2:32. 2:30 as well.
Yeah. 2:30, Charlie Kirk. 7 o'clock, quite frankly. I'll be on at 7:20-ish, and we will see you then. All right, folks. All the best as always. Deuces. Give it to him, Laura. Deuces.
Deuces.
Got
Say
the-
bye.
There it is.
We're going to say bye-bye.
Say bye. Roro makes an appearance. He's so cute. He's got the cutest little little voice. All right, folks. Thank you, my very special guest, Kari Lake, for making the time to join us. And we will see you on Wednesday on Inside the Numbers as well. Don't forget, tomorrow is What Are the Odds at 7:30. Charlie Kirk, 2:30 tonight. Charlie Kirk, 2:30 this afternoon. Quite frankly, 7 o'clock tonight. What Are the Odds, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow night. And Inside the Numbers at folks. All the best.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but you don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette.